time for the deep dive. Follow us on Twitter at Pauly Howard at Teddy_covers. The Giants win total 8.5. $1.40 to the over. Money pouring in on the over. You're seeing nines at some books. Last year, 11-5 straight up. 8-6-2 ATS. 12 of the 16 games went under. 7 of the 8 games on the road went under. 7-2 straight up in games decided by less than a touchdown. Mainstream stats, 25 takeaways, 27 giveaways. A lot of issues on up. I mean, he couldn't run the ball at all. I like Perkins, but I mean, 3.5 yards per rush, 30th in the league. 6.5 yards per pass attempt, slightly above average. 5.2 yards per play, below average. Only 22 sacks allowed. Third best in the NFL, Teddy.
Yeah, I mean, the offense wasn't very good. Let's be real. As you mentioned, they couldn't run the football. They were below average in yards per play. The one thing that they were able to do a little bit, Eli didn't take a lot of sacks. And when he was able to complete a pass, he had more than his fair share of big play touchdowns. That went a long way towards that winning record over the course of the campaign, and that's why they were a playoff team. But let's be real. The reason the Giants made the playoffs last year was because that defense was pretty darn good.
Yes. Now, I like the moves they made. They bring in Brandon Marshall, so you got Marshall, Beckham, and Shepard. You also take Ingram, the tight end, out of Ole Miss. That's a good move. They also took the running back from Clemson as well, which isn't bad as well. But Eli, where are you at with Eli? Well, I think 26 touchdowns, 16 picks. He had some horrible games. But in spite of Eli, with a really good defense, they won 11 games.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, last offseason, the Giants made a big splash. And we talked about it. They signed the defensive tackle, Damon Harrison. They signed the cornerback, Janoris Jenkins. They signed the defensive end, Oliver Vernon. What was it, like $200 million they spent to bring those three guys into the fold? And thanks to a large part to those upgrades, they were a playoff team for the first time since they won the Super Bowl back in 2011. Of course, they got blown out by the Packers in the opening round. But, we talk about that defense. For the season, 5.2 yards per play. That's a top quartile. 6.5 yards per pass attempt. Again, it wasn't a disaster. Not great. But number 2 in the NFL against the run. They had a pretty good pass rush as well. So you say, what's the deal with Eli? Eli wasn't that good a season ago. And you can see it pretty clear when you look at this graphic. We're talking about a guy that's 36 years old. He's not his brother. He's Eli. This is his 14th season in the league. And over the last couple of seasons, the weapons around him are fine. The offensive line is reasonable. Eli Manning has been steadily declining. QBR of 67.5, 7.3 yards per pass in 2014. By 2016, the QBR was down more than 10 points. The yard per pass down more than half a yard. That's a significant drop-off and a significant concern for a team that doesn't really have a great situation at the backup quarterback this season. All that Ryan Nassib talk, well, he's trying to hang out in New Orleans right now. If something happens to Eli, the Giants' season is probably done.
Well, he could also have a big year because he has so many weapons, and imagine if they get the running game going. But this is a team that does not have stats. I mean, you look at this. Mike Lombardi had a great line about they were running a Ponzi scheme last year. You look at the turnover battle, and they couldn't run the ball, and somehow they still won 11 games. Defense.
They won the close games, and they played great defense. Football, yeah, sure. Offense is about close to half of it. So's defense, so's special teams, and they did pretty good in that regard. And they didn't neglect. You talked about Evan Ingram. Signing him drafting him the number 1 pick out of Ole Miss, and I think that I'm with you. They do have a lot of weapons right now for Eli to throw to, but I like the second pick as well, Dalvin Tomlinson, the defensive tackle at Alabama. He's someone that's going to be plugged right into the rotation, and of course, maybe the QB of the future in Davis Webb from Cal in the 3rd round. And you remember Wayne Gallman. He was a difference maker at Clemson and a guy who has potential. I don't know if he's actually going to do it, but he's potential to give him some burst in the running game. But, you talked about Brandon Marshall joining OBJ and Shepard, Victor Cruz and his dancing shoes gone. One thing that I want to focus on the offensive line depth is better, Pauly. It really is. They signed the former Chargers first-round pick G.J. Fluker, and then they thought they were going to squeeze John Jerry out of New York. Instead, they re-signed Jerry just a couple of days later. The Bobby Hart at right tackle maybe is a guy that they like a lot. it's not a team that was able to make a ton of moves this offseason, but the moves they made, I thought, I'm with you. They were good ones, and offensive line depth is an area of strength for the Giants this year that hasn't been that way in many recent seasons.
Tough schedule. The NFC East plays the NFC West and the AFC West. 2 extra games. Detroit at home, who they beat at home last year, and they also go to Tampa. Only 6 1 p.m. Eastern time starts. A lot of primetime games. You're putting them on national TV to feature Eli and company.
Sure. I mean, the NFL will be rooting for the Giants to succeed this season. As you mentioned, for an East Coast team to only play 6 games that start at 1 o'clock Eastern time, that's a rarity. So you're going to see the Giants a lot on TV. And if they're good, they have the potential to be something of a public team. And we've seen that in years past. Of course, when the New York teams are good, they tend to get a pretty big bandwagon and more than their fair share of media attention.
What do you think of this, with the Giants, gun to head, and what do you think of the division?
There's a number of teams that I don't like in this division. We talked about Dallas yesterday. I'm not in love with the Cowboys. We'll get to the Redskins. I'm not in love with the Redskins either. If I'm playing the Giants, I might play the Giants to win the division. And I would probably, but obviously we've seen the markets move heavily towards New York as they're fading the Cowboys and they're fading the Redskins in early betting action.
Hey guys, for the full video, go to sbrpicks.com.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our channel. Now, we've put a lot of work into producing all these free videos, so please help us out and keep all our content free for you forever by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Now, not to mention, a visit to our industry-leading website will warm the hearts of all our SBR employees, especially myself. Now, the links are over there to the left, so do check those out. Thanks for watching.